We hope to stay at the forefront of learning. I think that's really what our passion is, whatever that means. So we want to be able to deliver the best combination of technology and learning that we can possibly do. And I think, staying at the forefront of that has always been essentially the passion. So, and for a while that was learning management. It started with e-learning, and now we've taken this back to how can we get the most out of learning and deliver the most with it.
Let's discover the Cleveland entrepreneurial ecosystem. We are telling the stories of its entrepreneurs and those supporting them. Welcome to the Lay of the Land podcast, where we are exploring what people are building in Cleveland. I am your host, Jeffrey Stern, and today we are learning about the future of learning. I had the pleasure of speaking with Bob Baskette, who is the founder and CTO of Roundtable Learning, a company based here in Cleveland working to push the boundaries of how learning can work in practice. Roundtable Learning has reimagined what learning is by building innovative training solutions that leverage immersive learning and extended reality technology like virtual reality and augmented reality. This allows people to gain real experience by going through situations virtually that would be too costly or too dangerous or just too difficult to replicate in the real world, like complex factory processes or active shooter scenarios, for example. To help organizations enrich their current learning programs, Roundtable has developed custom learning content for corporations like Amazon, Walmart, Kellogg's, Cox Communications, and more to help them engage with and develop their workforce. It is pretty amazing to see the future being built by a local company and to hear the nuance and detail of how Roundtable Learning is doing it. So please enjoy my conversation with Bob Baskette. So I've been very much looking forward to this conversation. One of the things that has always been really interesting to me is these kind of technologies on the forefront of progress and innovation, and VR, AR. I hear about them all the time, and it's very cool to find a company in Roundtable Learning and the work that you're doing that is putting it into practice and has found a real business model around it. And so I've been very excited to understand and learn more about how the company has evolved and the work that you're all doing and your own personal journey into bringing this all together. All of which we'll explore over the course of this conversation. But thanks for coming on, Bob.
Hey, thank you very much, Jeffrey.
So I'd love to start with just kind of laying the context and giving everyone a sense for where you're coming from and where Roundtable Learning has come from. But maybe just to set that context, let's start with a brief overview of how you describe Roundtable Learning today, and we'll kind of work our way backwards from there.
All right. Well, okay. So it goes, Roundtable Learning is a full-service learning and development group that leverages immersive learning technology to develop learning content that achieves real performance improvements. So that's a lot of words.
Yeah.
So what we're doing is we're essentially identifying all modalities of learning, and we really identify first and foremost as a learning company, and we bring the technology with us. So we have fantastic people that work here as instructional designers, e-learning developers, as well as the engineering side with 3D modeling and software development. So, but we lead with that learning, and part of that is delivering and finding ways to measure that performance. And we do that in AR and VR. We do that in traditional learning, and we do that with tools that we develop to deliver those as well.
And what was your own path to Roundtable Learning? Roundtable Learning, as I have understood it, it's evolved quite a lot over the years in terms of offerings and maybe the vision, but how is it that you came to start this company?
So now this is probably about 20 years ago at this point. We had started sort of in around .com boom era as essentially e-commerce consultants in the area. The idea was to we didn't want to be making everybody else's product and dream come true. So we wanted to sit down and find a good idea for ourselves, something that we believed in, that we could build. And I think everybody in the group at that time really gelled around learning, just because one, it just didn't exist at the time. Content delivery or digital e-learning was very much based, there's a lot of military work, CBTs from the AICC group, and the web just hadn't arrived there yet for digital learning. So back in those early days, we were making content, and we had some success getting Parker Refrigeration as an original LMS customer, because the refrigeration division wanted to get some training out to their folks. And not only did we have this training that we could make for the web, but they had nowhere to put it and no way to figure out if anybody took it. So kind of walked our way backwards into that initial kind of LMS circa 2001, 2002. So
and LMS is learning management
system. So I think at the time we were, one of a dozen or so max people that even offered this. It sort of progressed from there. We ended up kind of more of a boutique shop for setting up these customized LMS solutions for customers so that they could get their corporate training out. And then it started ballooning. People asked for things. People always want more when they like what you're doing. So we started getting asked about HR software, which is kind of funny. So we ended up creating modules to do onboarding, to do job boards and recruitment. And it turned into this monster of a talent management suite that we were trying to deliver. And just over the course of time, it was really we were trying to do too much, I think. And we've really tried to focus back in over the course of those years, focused back in on the learning side of that. And that's where we felt we could make the most impact, what we've been doing the longest, what we know best. And so we continued on that path. And obviously, as we went through, the learning landscape, especially digital, has gone through in that time 2 separate sets, at least, of consolidations. The market's very competitive. And at that point, we decided to exit the LMS space because we're competing with folks that have, 700 people working on 10,000 new features. And that we just knew we weren't going to have the most impact there. And so at this time when we were going through that, our director of immersive learning now was taking some first steps into some AR/VR experimentation. And we kind of threw all our weight into that. And in the end, ended up developing not just immersive VR training in those initial days. It's really about 2-3 years ago at this point, but now developing a system for content delivery as well as management of that content and collection of analytics and disaggregation of those. And this is all in addition to the core e-learning business that we still do.
Right. It's quite a journey. The breadth from starting very, very specific, evolving from the consulting world and being kind of reined back in, it sounds like, from the market to really focus on the learning side of things. With the immersive learning, which I want to talk a lot more about, is that something that you found was similarly being extracted from you guys by the market, or was it more you guys had a vision for an application of it that filled this void in the market that it maybe didn't even know that it had?
Well, maybe a little of both. You could definitely see it on the horizon. And there was, what I really see from it is that the cost for VR, virtual reality headsets, and the accessibility of the software and development tools from it was starting to get to a point where it was realistic to have, a number of these things for a corporate customer. That and the software toolkits available were starting to become more accessible as well. So it was really, cost went down, the general market awareness of it as a possibility went up. And I think, we just kind of latched onto it and started making some internal demos and putting a few things out there for, AR and VR at the same time. I think that some of those original demos we had an engineer do a virtual office space in Vive on the Unreal Engine. So these are a headset brand. I'm sorry. You can stop me for technical terms. So.
Yeah.
But the tethered Vive headset that was linked to a tower computer that had to power it, so you could take a virtual walk through our office. We also had some what you do is you sit down at Target that a phone or a tablet could recognize and display a 3D model around that. And so we did a number of these, and really came to a head when we did and I believe we have a white paper on our website for Superior Beverage. And this was essentially people stacking pallets. And this is something where somebody would spend, I believe, half a day on a line, slowing everything down. No, I don't know. They would spend half a day on a line actually training. And what we did is we created a virtual training environment that allowed them to kind of get an idea. It's not a perfect simulation. It's VR, but it provided a good enough sense of what's going on, what's coming, and what you can do to really get people to a level where they could just spend a half hour actually on the floor to be productive. So it's a neat story.
Yeah, no, it's one of the things I wanted to ask you about when you envisioned, immersive learning. Again, we'll come to some definitions here in a sec. But when you envisioned immersive learning as a solution, what were the problems that it solves? And it sounds like maybe it's in that some of these trainings are only possible historically without this kind of technology by actually doing it, which causes some burden to the organization overall. But what were some of the problems that you guys had recognized that this kind of solution could alleviate?
Sure. And I think there's two things. There's the simulation aspect, which is, what we're talking about there. I'm performing a task that I need to be trained to do, and I need to do it with some amount of precision. And I'm going to measure the precision with which I've performed that task and my ability to repeat it. That's the obvious. One thing that folks miss frequently is we're able to put people in situations that make them really uncomfortable, and by using anything from 360 video or full 3D environments to help those soft skills training. So yeah, with soft skills training, you can really put somebody in that situation, and the fact that they're in VR, let's say that you have an irate customer situation, you can put that angry customer in front of them. You have a store buzzing with people. You have distractions, things going off. Like how do you react to them? And we can definitely, and then we can start recording those interactions and figuring out how well people do with them, and then give them coaching to get them to the right place. Same goes with, there's scenarios like active shooter, things where people need to have, real knowledge to have that, to be a little bit scared so they know what to do in a real situation. So it's all about getting people fully immersed in a situation. So when they're actually presented with it, they have a wealth of experience already canned that they can tap into.
Right. An experience where they were not subject to real harm.
Yes. Well, that's very important. Right? We're working on that, though. No.
Well, okay. I think it might be a good time to just define some terms here. But when we talk about immersive learning, extended reality, augmented reality, virtual reality, how are you thinking about these terms denotationally? How are they related? And specifically in the context of Roundtable Learning, how are you leveraging them?
So immersive learning in general is the idea that, people learn best when they're deeply involved with their training content, and it's holding their attention completely. And they're able to evoke critical thinking by interacting with it. So it's, how are they experiencing it? What are they doing with it? How is that reinforcing the concepts being presented? And then when you think about extended reality or XR, that's kind of the umbrella term for all of these things. So it's really around the technology for delivery. It includes augmented reality, which is your AR, and that's essentially you're being presented with an image and of real life, and you're overlaying, let's say, a virtual item into the real scenario, and that can be done. With a headset like HoloLens, or I don't know if you remember the Google Glass that was hot for a minute. Mm-hmm. That was essentially providing information in virtual space over top of a real space. And then, of course, we have virtual reality, which is essentially a fully immersive, either 3 degrees of freedom, which means you're basically stationary and an observer interacting with what's immediately around you, or you have 6 degrees of freedom, where you can actually walk around in the space and interact with things. And then additionally, there's mixed reality, which is which is a newer term where we're starting to combine either real world images and objects with a VR experience. So it's kind of part augmented, part virtual. So there's different combinations of things therein that kind of make that XR term necessary.
Got it. When you were kind of first developing the prospect for this immersive learning technology, one of the things that I think I always hear and envision about specifically this kind of development is how expensive it is, and the specific kind of expertise that it requires. And so was the ability to develop this kind of software, was there, a fundraising mechanism involved with this specific kind of development? Were you able to fund it just from the proceeds from the rest of the business? How did you kind of approach the business prospect of the initial development for all the work that you were doing on this front?
So the initial part of it was actually done all internally, and the bulk of that was done by Scott Stacey, our director of immersive learning, who really dug into some of those initial technology pieces, and we were in there to essentially support kind of the most technical pieces of that. We did a lot of work. He did a lot of work specifically, but we've all done a lot of work to kind of grow it as a project internally. So we had a lot of freedom thanks to our owner, Dan Gradual, who's really supported the whole process as well as we've gone.
And so just to kind of give the lay of where the business is today, how much, like what are I'll take a step back. One of the things that really struck me was kind of the breadth of kind of use cases in terms of what you are offering, from anything like these high intensity active shooter situations to more, warehouse process kind of tasks. What is the breadth of the kinds of things that you're tackling with this? Maybe we could just start there.
So
and how you think about like what to address.
So typically we're listening to our customers first and foremost, because we have a good handle on the technology and the delivery of it. So that gives us the ability to apply it in a lot of different ways. We have a good common toolkit to use. And it's the breadth. We do some crazy stuff. We've got air marshaling. So we're landing planes with we're directing planes in with batons, using voice recognition in the headset to simulate a voice-activated computer system for packing. We're doing full video shoots with a full cast of professional actors on location to record the soft skills. So as far as the breadth, I think where we've ended is I don't think we've done a sit-down, full-in vehicle driving simulation, but we've come pretty close with some basic things for safety with a wheel and some pedals and some screens. So
I understand how the technology infrastructure that you've developed would be pretty extensible to handle any of these situations. But do you have to acquire the specific domain expertise in-house to develop the situations that people are then trained in? Or is that a collaborative process with your customers to develop those?
It is, yeah. That's always a collaborative process, and that goes back to kind of our experience in learning as well. Because anytime you're developing e-learning that you're not, let's say, originating yourself and generating as like an off-the-shelf component, you're relying on what are referred to as SMEs or subject matter experts. So we work with our customer subject matter experts to find where the business need is for it, how can be applied correctly. Because a lot of it's fun looking, but it's not always the correct answer for your learning, and we're happy to tell you that it isn't.
So the next consequence of this is, what have you seen as the outcomes? I imagine there are a few things I kind of want to dive into here, but what is generally the reception from customers working with what I imagine is unprecedented, just a new way of traione their employees to handle these kinds of situations?
Yeah, well, what we've seen from customers where we've gone back and looked at it is reductions in training times. A lot of times we've reduced training time up to a third, 50% reduction in workers' comp claims in some of these cases, 12% reduction in training costs because they don't have to have people there all the time on staff. They can go through in groups. and then a measured increase of 10% in productivity. So what we hear from our users is things like, the fact that we felt like we were an actual store in a store speaking to someone who was standing in front of our product. It was a great example of a store visit and ad pitch. We've gotten all kinds of great feedback about actually, being there and having the experience. Like they thought they were there, they were ready for the situation, but once they actually were in there, they knew they weren't, and then gained something coming out of it. So that's really where we feel the most impact, and those are the kind of things we like to hear the most.
Is there resistance that you ever experience with just a completely new way? Do people find it difficult ever to partake in this kind of training? What's the learning curve itself for individuals trying to experience it? And I'm wondering what the kind of, like if there's any psychological resistance to what you guys are trying to do.
Well, I think a lot of the people that are coming are typically very excited to be trying it. There's usually a lot of excitement around attempting an AR VR project. Some of the resistance pieces, I guess, would be some people have problems with wearing a VR headset. They don't feel comfortable putting it on. In that case, we're able to provide ways that they can take the same training in a more traditional way, literally the same training on a computer or through their web browser. It's an exciting technology that people aren't quite sure how they want to use yet. They think it can make a difference, but I think one of the biggest things is walking them through, one, how we think it could actually solve their problem, and two, how we're going to measure that response and get them useful information for the business. So I think those are the two biggest things that we typically worry about.
And where do you feel like we are in the broader adoption of VR as a technology today? Like, why is it taking it so long for it to go mainstream? I feel like growing up, I've been hearing about it as like, just 2 more years and then mainstream adopt. But like, what has been going on that it's still a little bit far away, but that you've now found real, commercial viability and success in an enterprise product?
I think it's the computing trend of smaller devices with better CPUs, better GPUs on them. I'm sorry, maybe too technical, but basically, I think the cell phone revolution that happened actually largely is powering VR at the moment, because if you think about a lot of these devices, whether it's an enterprise Pico, some of the new Vibes, the Oculus devices, they're essentially cell phones strapped to your face with 2 screens on them. And that kind of cost and power savings and the ability to operate it independently of a tower computer with a powerful graphics card has really opened it up. And the fact that the hardware is so mass produced right now really has brought down the cost of those devices. So now you can get, for $300 or $400, you can get a good quality VR headset in your home today. And at that point, you can now justify purchases of, 10, 15, 20, 2,000 of these things to be able to deploy content on. So I'd say it's largely an outgrowth of the advancements in mobile and power saving chipsets as a whole.
So I want to tie together the advancements on the technology front with the work you're doing right now at Roundtable Learning, and just kind of, query, looking forward with the direction the technology is headed, are there things that you are excited about that you guys have worked through kind of internally at Roundtable Learning that will be coming on the horizon as a consequence of where the technology is going that you can't do right now?
So, well, there are things that are possible, but highly dependent, because some of them are still, very expensive and things that we've done and looked at. But I think there's a lot more to be done with mixed reality, just a ton, as far as being able to integrate real world objects and motion capture with the VR world, as well as using things like haptics and custom peripherals. So there are a lot of different ways to get more out of the experience and more out of the technology. Those pass-through cameras to allow better augmented reality are going to be great. Right now, you can look at things like a HoloLens, or even we have a Korean headset called Nreal, which is kind of interesting. And these things allow augmented reality, but they're still a tiny window. The HoloLens 2 is slightly better, but as far as the technology is concerned, once we get more of a field of view in AR, and that might be enabled by a next generation Oculus device or some other VR headset as opposed to an AR headset. But once we get there and we can start mixing in the real world with virtual environments, there's a lot more that can be done that we're excited about.
And on top of LMS, is what you are selling here specifically a software product that those who have the hardware of the VR headsets purchase, or is it a whole comprehensive experience that you are selling when you are developing and bringing to market these trainings and solutions?
So we're primarily offering the software. So basically, we're working with our customers to develop the training itself, and that exists in its own separate application that can be deployed. But additionally, we offer the package called Mercury XRS, which is the SaaS product that allows you to deploy that content to the headsets, allow single sign-on and analytics tracking as well, so that users can come back, do dashboarding from a learning perspective, and then be able to disaggregate those results all the way back to, let's say, a BI system, third-party LMS or LRS. So we're doing everything instead of a generic analytics way around VR and content deployment for delivering applications. We're doing it. We have essentially a learning focus around that as well. So things are handled with XAPI extensions. They're done in learning native ways, and the bent with which we create them focuses around that sort of data collection.
So what is really the broader vision for what you guys are doing at Roundtable Learning? Understanding the past has been kind of this collage of different directions and kind of honing back in on learning management as the focus. But when you think towards the future, what is the impact that you hope to have, and what are you most excited about as a consequence of the work that you are doing?
Basically, we hope to stay at the forefront of learning. I think that's really what our passion is, whatever that means. So we want to be able to deliver the best combination of technology and learning that we can possibly do. And I think, staying at the forefront of that has always been essentially the passion. So, and for a while that was learning management. It started with e-learning, and now we've taken this back to how can we get the most out of learning and deliver the most with it.
So when you develop these programs, how often are they extensible trainings, right? If you're working with someone to develop that airline, landing the plane program, is that then a product that you take to market and are able to sell kind of across that vertical? And what's kind of the strategy for, again, like which of these programs you're developing and kind of the reusability of them, if you will?
Well, right now, for the most part, the applications themselves are bespoke, right? They're basically developed on demand for the customer. We have a certain set of toolkits that we bring with us. And of course, we have the product that comes with those toolkits, the XRS. So the broader vision is to be able to allow people to eventually make software for that XRS platform so that we can give them tools, be able to create content for it, and possibly create an ecosystem around that, as well as creating, obviously we're always looking at ways that we can take our own skills and hone them. So we do have some off-the-shelf products that we have in mind that are not yet to market.
Right, because that's what I was working towards is how do you think about like where the flywheel comes from and building some of those network effects? Have there been any considerations or interest from the market with regards to more just consumer-based learning rather than on the enterprise front?
Well, given the amount of effort it takes to put it in, I don't think we felt too much from the consumer side. I think it's mostly B2B. I'm trying to think if there was consumer facing.
Or from like maybe academic institutions or things that could be applicable to many consumers, but less like a one-off development for a person.
Oh, yes. Okay. So, I mean, there's obvious applications that we've been looking at, and some of those are, it's one of the things that we're looking at is that soft skills training. I think there's a lot of opportunity there, and there's some other things that I don't want to quite let out of the bag yet, but there's some other interesting opportunities that we have with partners to bring out some really great content in the future.
Got it. And what does the competitive landscape look like in this world?
Oh, There aren't a lot of them, but they're definitely there. So, of course, we've got some folks that do similar things, not exact. Everybody's kind of doing it a little differently. It's not as bad as, let's say, in the LMS market, where everybody's basically competing on a fixed set of 200 features, and it's and it's a race to the bottom there. It's more about different types of service offerings, whether people are offering mostly soft skills, mostly 3 degrees of freedom, kind of passive consumption. People that are full on simulations. These are your engineering simulation companies that are doing, that are focusing only on that. So there's a lot of different flavors in the market right now. And there's a few of them that focus specifically on corporate learning like us. And the market's also international. There's a lot of UK companies out there too right now, which we thought was interesting as far as that seems to be a big innovation hub for VR and AR now too as well. So it's not just from the coast anymore.
And is your focus mostly domestic, or have you had that interest from abroad as well?
We've been primarily doing domestic companies. We're involved with, basically U.S. Fortune 500 companies. So we do work with Amazon, Walmart, Staples, those kinds of companies. So it's been, we figure there's plenty to do at home first.
Sure. What's the kind of scale of the company today? How many customers are we talking about? And just maybe a little overview of what the company itself looks like today, how you guys kind of structure the business of Roundtable Learning.
Let's see here. So as far as the number of customers, boy, I don't know if I could tell you that number offhand. It seems to be a whirlwind lately. We're growing. Right now, we clock in around 30 people, and that we have engineers working on specifically just content development. We have engineering working on the platform, the delivery platform and toolkits. 3D modelers coming up with all the stuff we get to put in. Instructional designers, graphic designers, e-learning developers, and sales and marketing. So as far as the skill sets, and every one of the skill sets around learning is used in every project. So almost none of these are just a pure technology. Well, actually, there is some pure learning pieces as well, though. But the focus is bringing together that differentiator, which is bringing in that instructional design expertise to AR and VR and everything that we do here.
Yeah, no, it really the space you're in is really fascinating to me, because it like you were saying, it's not commoditized software, but it's also not straight up services. It's essentially, you've kind of built your own product internally that you can leverage like a product to offer these highly specific curated services for these large companies to develop the training programs that literally have never existed before.
Yes, and we hope to be able to release that platform into the wild as well. So we're our own best customer right now for that. But yeah, we have folks using not just the software that we develop as learning, but also the delivery product, which includes in single app content delivery for VR learning to the device, and handles all that single sign-on and all that analytics capture as well. So I think that's, it's that combination, because we understand, coming from e-learning and LMS, we understand what you need to get back out of it in order to make good decisions. And we're helping our customers, find how to do that in VR, so that we can, provide real ROI and provide, real ways to measure and understand how the learning is impacting their organization and how it fits into the broader scope.
Right. No, it's fascinating. Do you find that there is already developer interest in the impending releasing of the product that you have internally?
Yes, actually. In fact, we've been in contact. I was just thinking, I told you not much international, but I've been talking to somebody in the EU right now about it, because they're very excited about it as well. There are a number of platform competitors, and I think, again, we're trying to differentiate ourselves by providing better tools to help make that software and providing more open platform. And I think that's what's going to be the biggest selling point right now. I was going to say we're supporting the Vive Focus, the HoloLens 2, the Oculus devices, the Pico devices, iOS and Android tablets for AR. So we have a number of things that we can deploy to, and we've been able to make that tool set in such a way that we can effectively deploy to all of them.
And I imagine just as the technology itself becomes more accessible to people, that there just may be a greater demand for things like this. You're kind of ahead of the wave, if you will.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think once people get an idea of how this can impact their organizations and how much more effective it is in certain aspects and certain kinds of training, I think we're going to see a lot of movement.
Yeah, because I mean, I haven't experienced a VR training myself, but the own personal experience I've had going through VR was first one of a little skepticism. Mm-hmm. And then trying it back in the day and finding it a little underwhelming because I was a little nauseated, but trying it more recently and truly being blown away by the experience with the headsets that exist today. And I think the thing that struck me most about the experience was when you play a video game or you watch the video on the screen of your computer, you kind of compartmentalize it as something else. It's like content you are consuming. But when you are in VR, it is experiential. It is like you are creating memories of like things that you are doing. It's a very different experience, and it really is this kind of magical thing. And I would be very excited to kind of imagine the world where education has that component kind of built into it. It seems very cool to me.
Yeah, I think that's really one of the most interesting parts about it is, again, that feedback from active shooter training that we received, which was, basically like, I didn't know how I'd react in that situation. I didn't think it would be anything until I was in it, and I didn't know, I wasn't actually sure how to hit the panic button, like really internalizing what's going on. Like they were really there in their mind, and really faced with those situations. So yeah, creating that broad impact. I mean, and that's a negative one, but there are of course positive ones around, customer interaction, getting people the right help, getting them to the right place, being able to let people imprint that in their memory. By doing it, there's so much more that we can do once some of these upcoming technologies become more mainstream.
I look forward to following the work you guys are doing and seeing what transpires. So one thing, I'll tie it back here to Cleveland at the end. For something that we do for everyone that comes on the show is to explore not necessarily their favorite things in Cleveland, but for things that other people may not know about, their hidden gems in Cleveland, if you will. So totally unrelated to business. Okay. And what you're doing at Roundtable Learning. But with that, I will ask you for some of your hidden gems in the area.
I don't get out as much as I used to, but one of the hidden gems I think in the area is St. Herman's House over on Franklin Avenue, or in the near West Side. And they're a men's shelter. They're a place that up until the pandemic would serve literally 3 meals a day to anybody that showed up. So they provide a tremendous service to the community, and Paul Finley over there is the director. Has done a super job. My son and I head there to make meals whenever we can. Each of the parishes that are involved tend to come in and have a meal day where we all basically take turns volunteering and serving. And then my kids get to go out and they're out there with the people, and we're all eating together, and it's a tremendous experience. Pandemic times, of course, have changed things, but they've knocked it back to just 2 meals a day, which is still a tremendous effort, and they do a tremendous job there. So I think it's really one of the gems of Cleveland proper.
That's fantastic. Well, Bob, thank you very much for your time and for sharing the work you're doing with Roundtable Learning. It was I had very much been looking forward to learning about what you guys were doing. I just hadn't come across you guys before, and so it's been great to have you on and to share your story.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, and very kind interviewer. I appreciate it.
For sure, for sure. If folks have anything that they would like to follow up with you about the technology, about the business, what is the best place for them to do so?
Sure. I think you can find us on LinkedIn at Roundtable Learning or roundtablelearning.com. Those two places are your best bets at getting to us.
Well, thank you again, Bob.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jeffrey. Take care.
That's all for this week. Thank you for listening. We'd love to hear your thoughts on today's show. So if you have any feedback, please send over an email to jeffrey@layoftheland.fm or find us on Twitter at podlayoftheland or at sternjefe, Jefe. If you or someone you know would make a good guest for our show, please reach out as well and let us know. And if you enjoy the podcast, please subscribe and leave a review on iTunes or on your preferred podcast player. Your support goes a long way to help us spread the word and continue to bring the Cleveland founders and builders we love having on the show. We'll be back here next week at the same time to map more of the land. The Lay of the Land podcast was developed in collaboration with the Up Company LLC. At the time of this recording, unless otherwise indicated, we do not own equity or other financial interests in the company which appear on this show. All opinions expressed by podcast participants are solely their own and do not reflect the opinions of any entity which employs us. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions. Thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.